I'm very excited to give you this tour. And as we take a look at new authoring, I'm going to show you why we think it's easier to learn, easier to use, but it's actually more powerful than the classic Zingtree you have today. So let's start there. Let's start with something that you're familiar with. Here is classic Zingtree, as we're calling it. And we're just going to start with something very simple. Maybe you need to do this all the time. You need to find a specific tree to work on. And for today's demo, we're going to walk through changes that we have to make. These are just made up changes, but they might reflect the kind of work that you have to do. And the tree that we're going to be working on today has the word script in it. And I have a few trees here that might match that. And so one technique that you probably know of or might use is to use the browser search. So I can search this page for the word script, and I do have a few things that match that. So this works, right? You can find what you're looking for, although that may vary depending on how many trees you have here. So before we go further, I'm just going to jump over to the new authoring. We're at new authoring now. We're at that same page, the My Trees page, because I just wanted to show you this feature here where we can search for trees and get instant search results. So here, when I type the word script, you can see as I start to type, I'm getting those matches instantly. So instead of looking throughout the whole page, I can see just those 4 trees that match script, which is a small thing, but a useful improvement, we think. Okay, we'll get into the fun stuff in a moment. We'll come back to new authoring here, but to start, I just want to show you these changes as you would have to make them today in classic authoring. So we're going to open this tree. Now I have my notes here to work from so that I remember what we want to change. And you probably do too, right? If you have changes from a colleague, or you might collect those in email or a Word document. So this should look familiar to the kind of work that you have to do. So let's say for this particular tree, we have some numbers in here, and then the numbers have to do with the square footage numbers. And so we need to change this because something's changed in our customer service process. Now we have to change this to say 7,000 square feet, not 6,000 square feet anymore. So how would we do that? Well, we're going to look through this tree to find where these values exist and then change them. So let's just do a little bit of that. So we'll start here at the overview, and we'll edit this node. And here we have this couple instances of this number. So I'm going to change that to 7. I'm going to change that to 7. And I can see these go to other nodes. So I have to remember, I have to go to 7. I have to go to 8 because these numbers are there as well. Even though it's just the label for that node, we want our tree to be accurate and complete. So got to save, don't forget that. And now I'm back at the top. So what were those nodes again? They were 7 and 8. Okay, so we got to go down here. There's some of those numbers again. So we're going to change this one. Change 6 to 7. Don't forget to save. We're back at the top. Where do we need to go? Node 8. Okay, scroll again. Do you see what I'm showing you here? I'm showing you how when you need to edit your tree, you're bouncing back and forth between multiple pages. And each time you go to a new page, you have to start at the top and go back down to the node. So I'm just illustrating this to you. It shouldn't be anything that seems unfamiliar. Maybe you're just used to it today, but I just want to contrast this now that I've made these changes here. I want to contrast this to new authoring. So let's go back to new authoring, and I'm going to open that same tree there. This is exactly the same tree. I just imported it. And so the first thing that I want to point out is that the entire tree exists on this one page. At the top, we have tools. On the left, we have a view of the nodes. Here, this is in a list view of the nodes. We also have another view, a visual view, which I'll show you later. And then on the right, we have the currently selected node and all the content and information associated with it. So everything is in one place. This is one of the biggest benefits of new authoring, is that this information is not spread across multiple pages, but it exists on a single screen. So there's a few ways that I could find this information I'm looking for here. There's a new feature here where I can just filter these nodes and type the number that I'm looking for. That would be helpful. But what I want to do is just replicate what I showed you a moment ago in classic Zingtree and how that differs. So here's my first node that has this value of 6,000. I'm going to click on that. And I can change that here. and I can change that here. Now, don't forget to save. What? You don't have to. Did you notice that? I'll do it again. So as I change this number here, you'll see all changes saved. So the changes are actually happening as I'm making them. So this will save you time and prevent you from forgetting to make a change if that's ever happened before, or leaving the page before you've committed the change. Okay, so I finished this, and remember we had nodes 7 and 8 as well. Well, instead of leaving this page and going back to the top of the node list and scrolling down, I can just keep working my way down this list. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. There's the next one. And when I click on that, now I can change this information here as well. I can change that one to 7. And I can change the next one to 7. That was a lot faster, right? I didn't have to leave this page at all here. It's all in one place. So we think that's a great improvement and benefit to new authoring. Okay, I think that's the things I wanted to show you in this step. We're going to go back to classic authoring and make another change. So as I journey back to classic authoring, I'm just going to stop midway here to show you another benefit of the new authoring experience, and that's just better use of the screen in general. So you'll notice, for example, this node title, it's right here at the top. Where is it in classic authoring? It's way down here. In fact, most of the top part of the page is taken up by stuff that isn't actually related to editing the tree. And in classic authoring, you see we've pushed a lot of that up to the top. So in addition to doing your work on one screen, the use of the screen real estate on that screen is more efficient. So less scrolling around and clicking. Okay, let's see, what's the next change that I'm going to make here? Okay, so let's go back to our overview. And now what I need to do is change the, here's an example here where I didn't commit that save, and I get the browser yelling at me. So what we want to do here is change the text that's on node 14. Okay, let's find node 14. So in this example here, we want to change this text. Let's say it's, instead of yes, it's okay. So we're going to edit that node. Now, something I might want to do while I'm here is just take a look at the relevant sections for this node. So looking at the action buttons, there we go. I think it actually was okay, and I needed to change it to yes. And maybe we want to check something else as well. The point here is that you have these different sections, right, for your content node or any of your nodes. And sometimes you might want to look at more than one at a time. Maybe you want to see the data entry fields, but also the action buttons, just to get a sense for what's similar or different between them. So to do that in classic Zingtree, you have these tabs. But in new authoring, we're presenting this a different way. So let me go to that same node. Here we go, here's 14. Now, what we can do here is show just the sections we want or hide the sections we don't want to see. So instead of tabs, we have these as panels. And I'll just collapse all the panels so you can see what that looks like. And if I just want to focus on, say, the data collection section and the question and action button, I can do that here, and I can close up everything else that's not related to the task that I'm working on. Okay, so let's make that change here. We're going to change okay to yes. And there's the same change there. Okay, so now you can see how within a node, the content is organized as panels instead of tabs, and why that's better. Let's see, what are we going to look at next? Okay, so now what we want to do is take a look at node 15, and what we want to know is, what are the other nodes coming in here? Because maybe there's something that we just want to understand about the overall flow of the tree. You probably know that you can just click the links that come into this node with this button here. And that's helpful to see that there's those two nodes. But sometimes you want to see it visually. Like, where in the tree is this? And what is 11 connected to? And you probably know that there's a way to do this in classic Zingtree. So let's try that. So we're going to use the visual designer to find out those nodes that are coming into 15. So how do we do that here? All right, so we load the visual designer, and if you've seen this before, you're familiar with it. So where is 14? It's over here. Maybe this is looking a little messy to me. So I'm going to use the auto arrange tool. And now we have a different view of it. So let's go back over to 14. What comes into 14? no, 15, sorry. We want to see what comes into 15. Well, that sort of tells me maybe I want to edit it. I can't do that. Okay, so maybe you've tried to use this, maybe you do use it, but we've totally reimagined the visual designer, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So I mentioned before that the left-hand side of the screen shows all the nodes in a list. We can also flip over and see them in a flowchart view. And when we do that, we have the view of the tree with the nodes still selected that we were looking at, by the way. That's something I didn't mention before. So if I'm focusing on, say, this node here, 14, I can flip back and forth between the two and not lose my place. But what I wanted to point out to you here is the visual designer, that this is so much easier to read and easier to follow than the visual designer in classic Zingtree. So I can see, for example, that yes, there are nodes downstream. Is that what I was wondering? Yes. Do 2 nodes come into 15? Yes, I can see which nodes come into 15 here. And I can zoom out and see the entire tree, or I can go in, focus just on the area that I'm working on. And what we can do here as well is we're not going to get any errors if we try to edit something, all right? We're freely edit, and we can even freely add nodes and continue to work in this view. So I've used this for a while, and I find that it's very helpful to switch back and forth between different modes, because sometimes the mode of authoring is to understand the overall flow, and sometimes it is just to focus on a specific node, and you can do that here. All right, back to our changes. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add another node. This is going to be our last step today that we have to do. So what we need to do, I'm going to leave here. And what we need to do is we're going to add another action for node 11. We need to add a maybe action. And I just want to show you how you would do that, how it varies between classic Zingtree and new authoring. Oh, look at that. I didn't change this from my last demo. That's okay. Let's say we're going to add a 4th option. It doesn't matter. The idea is the same. Okay, so let's say we're going to add another action called sometimes. So I'm going to add the button. And now I need to make the node. So I'm going to save the changes. And back at the top again. We saw this problem earlier, right? And you're probably used to this, but you're definitely not going to miss it when classic in a new authoring, when you don't have to start each page from the very top, especially if it's a big tree and the node that you're working on is towards the bottom. Okay, so there's 15. No, sorry, this is 11. I'm confusing myself. Node 11 is where we need to add the sometimes. Okay, so we need to add a new destination for this. So there's our sometimes button. And we're going to save and add that new node, and it's going to be a content node. And we're going to title the node something sometimes. Okay, I did that pretty quickly, and you probably do too, but it did require jumping through a number of pages, clicking a number of things, and starting from the top of a page. So now let's see how we could do that in new authoring. I will use the flowchart view for this. So let's find the node that we need to work on. Right. So here we're going to add our sometimes to node 11. And how would I do that here? I go to this section and I'm going to add the action button. And we're going to call it sometimes. Now watch what happens when I just hit the tab key. It says new node sometimes, and it just made it there. So I didn't actually have to jump through multiple pages. It all happened on one screen. This is a tremendous time savings for a very common action, because if you create a button, chances are you need to link it to something, and that's either going to be an existing node or a new node. And if it is a new node, I think that's just a fantastic improvement that you can do all this from the one screen. It's fun. We can just add more buttons. And then I'll do it again, and I'll tab. And if I select a new node, it'll just create it right there for me. Fantastic. So there's actually more inside of new authoring that we could show you, but that's all the time we have for today. And those are some of the highlights. So I'll stop it there.